viewer. Enemy is taking Alpha.
So here we are once again for the final part of this video game, Autopsy. So I guess we should jump into the area about which I am least qualified. Multiplayer. Well, they seem to have chilled a bit with the woke nonsense for now. It's certainly not the reimagined for modern audiences fright fest that World War Woke was. Which is a good thing, right? Although I should qualify that the noble accolade of being less woke than Call of Duty Vanguard is a low resolution compliment on par with being less of a pedo than Jeffrey Epstein. Christ, some of the operators look like they're tough enough to go into combat without a comfort blankie. One of the operators even looks a little bit like it was inspired by Garand Thumb, right down to the peltors and the tactical helmet he always wears when he's doing the serious stuff, like getting people to shoot at him behind a berm. Although next time he makes a video like this, perhaps he should take a knee and let me provide some people for him to shoot at. And I won't even make them hide behind cover. The hacking seems utterly rife. Now, I know how this works. When you're really shit at FPS games like me, everyone seems to be cheating. When in reality, some people always pre-target certain spots as they go around corners, some people just are really good, and the entire situation is, let's face it, somewhat confused by the smoke screens thrown up by the developers these days. As in, introducing perks that mimic hacks, just to muddy the waters. That said, I'm not only an inveterate camper, but a veteran camper to boot. And over the years I've just developed a nose for watching and anticipating player movement patterns and spotting things that just don't seem to fit. I won't name and shame or show any particular footage to make nor break my case, but I will say this. Some of the pre-targeting in kill cams is a fucking sick joke. Christ, I saw one dude pre-target me through a fucking building and accidentally fire one shot by mistake. Now if that's not a hack, I don't know what is. I will let wiser men and lady men decide on how bad the cheating is. But it certainly seems that right now, cheating in Call of Duty is the big ticket item that the publishers, the developer and the streamers are not addressing. And the players simply have to pick up the bill. Christ, plenty of streamers have been busted cheating. It's rife.
1/3 of gamers are cheating bastards. That's according to the latest survey. 1/3 of online gamers are cheating bastards. I find that staggering, but also quite believable.
Why is it that we don't hear any of these streamers talking about the cheating problem that's occurring already? Why aren't we seeing any of the streamers talk about the day one release of cheats during PC beta on Modern Warfare 2? Should be the one thing people are focused on with the release of Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 on its way.
Davskar is a Czech streamer who was competing in the EU Twitch Rivals tournament and was very quickly called out for fishy looking gameplay by other pros including FIFA Kill. After his gameplay was reviewed, it was determined that he was in fact cheating and was removed from the tournament and given a ban. I'm not one to judge, but I feel like the punishment wasn't severe enough as it was only a 7-day slap on the wrist, and to this day he is still streaming and still a Twitch partner.
She'll be right back. Okay. That's fine. Alright, stream, I'll be right back. I'm in trouble.
I got permission. She just got yelled at for Activision because we just found some hacks on her account. Sorry to break it to you guys, but yeah, it's actually true. Imagine. Yep, she's done for.
Hey, I hosted a streamer hacking during a tourney. Just thought you should know Icy, Vixen, and @BeardedBanger. So these are the people that she was hosting at the time that she believed to be cheating. And she plays a clip of the alleged cheating here. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at it.
Got a vehicle here.
Can you get chefs? He's a one right here.
Down.
The combination of insane peeker's advantage combined with cheating means you get to see some insanely hilarious kill cams where people clearly know exactly where you are all the time. Perhaps they should spend a bit more time on anti-cheat and a little less time on creating a video game social credit system. The perks packages are a troll. Basically you have to level up to unlock them, then equip them, but then, in-game, they activate in sequence as the match progresses. It's arse. So basically, when the match starts, they don't go live immediately. They gradually activate in sequence during the course of the match. Then the game ends, and you go into the next match with them reset, and they unlock again as the match progresses. Change for change's sake, if you ask me. You will own no perks and you will be happy. I hate this system. You don't effectively own your perks anymore. It's more like you rent them. I would also note that the skill-based matchmaking clearly isn't working. In normal quick matches, if this is working, on average, I should be about average on the scoreboard, right? However, I'm almost always lowest score on both teams, and on the very rare occasions I'm not, I'm second to last at best. The obvious implication of this is that it simply is not working properly, because it's inconceivable that I'm one of the worst players in the world. This simply could not be true. Okay, it probably is true, but the one thing the skill-based matchmaking is not doing is putting me on the short bus with all the other slowpoke no-skillers, and this upsets me. Surely there has to be 11 other people in the world as bad as me, right? Right? The new weapon modularity system is well-intentioned, albeit not entirely functional, busy work. It's a bit dumb, and they don't even manage to differentiate between a genuine modular weapon platform and guns that might all look a bit like an AK-47 that are actually mechanically totally different on the inside. It's very sweet that they tried to do this weapon platform based unlocking system. Very sweet and very poorly researched, because an AK-47, an AN-94 and a PP-19 might all have a very similar looking top cover, but a piece of stamped metal does not a receiver make. But I can at least acknowledge what they were trying to achieve here. It didn't work, but they tried. The general idea is that if you level up an M4 enough, you not only unlock attachments, but you eventually unlock the related squad support weapon. I'm going to stop there, because this is a hot mess. Sadly, their anti-camping measures are fucking retardo in extremis. Now, my ideological position on camping is simply this. Lie down in a corner, preferably behind some claymores, and wait for an opportunity to piss someone off. Camping is life. So I admit that I might possibly be slightly biased here. However, if they had put a fraction of the effort into their anti-cheat measures as they have put into their anti-camping measures, cheating in Call of Duty would be a thing of the past. Every single location where you might put down the barbecue and get your marshmallows toasting has been carefully crafted and manipulated to be a problematic camping spot. Nearly every choke point or hidey hole has multiple access routes. Every roof has at least 2, sometimes innumerable ladders, stairs and access points. And dear lord, nearly every choke point or kill zone where you might consider setting up a sniping position has carefully curated obstacles placed in order to obstruct your line of sight. They have really taken a hammer to camping, which is doubly ironic really, when they designed the ground war maps in a way where roof Koreans can snipe into your fucking base from the front and both sides. So yeah, spawn camping good, professional camping bad. And if that wasn't enough, if you stay in the same spot for more than about a minute, you are instantly kicked for inactivity, regardless of whether you were shooting, firing RPGs, or throwing grenades. It's so pathetic. This might actually be a mistake, because you can loiter AFK for ages in the deployment screen and not get bumped. It is very clear that they want players bunny hopping around like arsetards, no-scoping, and they're trying to restrict tactical map control. They want people YOLOing around from cap point to cap point, chain dying and chain spawning. which is fine for Team Deathmatch, but I think they missed the point here. They are trying to compete with Battlefield, but doing everything they possibly can to stop divergent playstyles, which was one of the things that made Battlefield great back in the day. A support guy could strafe the shit out of the parking area to delay a cap. The hilltop snipers would instill fear in anyone crossing open terrain too slowly, and the YOLO sweatbobs could still bunny hop around like it was Call of Duty and get their jollies. These guys had the fucking cheek to have a default perks class called support, but if you lay down in the same spot, raining down suppressive fire for more than about a minute, you get kicked from the server for inactivity. Possibly link the AFK check to a score check too? Just saying. It's immersion breaking, it's inconsistent with what they're trying to achieve in Ground War, and frankly it's probably the biggest reason that I will stop playing eventually. It's no fun constantly having to think about shuffling around when you're sniping, just in case the low budget video game equivalent of an algorithm decides to kick you off the server because reasons. Especially not when a third of the players are running around with cheats and hacks and nobody is kicking those fuckers out of the match for being annoying. I'm just laying down in a corridor for fuck's sake. Activision should know that they have bigger fish to fry. I would also note that the timeout system is both lazy and shoddy and indicative of possibly a minimal production budget. The only condition is, have you been in the same spot for too long? You can spin around, you can throw grenades, you can spot, you can be firing your little sniper rifle to your heart's content, but the game doesn't care. If you don't do a little jiggle, you get bumped as AFK. This means that they either really just hate campers, they completely understand my playstyle and they're trying to fuck with me, or, and this is the most likely explanation, they were too piss lazy to enter any other conditions or checks. That's food for thought. The kill streaks and score streak selection is a great idea, particularly for Ground War. Basically, you can set your streaks to either score based or kill based counting. This makes a huge difference if you do busy work in Ground War but you're not necessarily actively killing. Personally, I think this is an excellent and flexible quality of life feature. The maps, however, are not fully worked up. You have stupid shit like one team's helicopter spawns under a tree, so if you take off with even the tiniest bit of backpedal, your rear rotor hits the tree and trashes about a third of the health of your chopper. Then there is the map where on one team the out of bounds boundary cuts in just in front of the launch pad. So if for example you take off and head straight towards one of the several cap points immediately in front of you, you will go out of bounds and get the obligatory 5-second timer, which is not enough time to get back into the map. So you insta-die. These are very one-sided and ultimately retarded features. In fact, the entire zoning system is balked, to be honest. The air vehicle and ground vehicle out of bounds zones are identical. And if you stray out of bounds, which is frequently very easy to do, it's not enough time to get back. Now I get that they're trying to stop people abusing the map boundary to pop out and back into the map, circumventing an obstacle like in the small map shipment in Call of Duty Vanguard. But this makes zero sense on a large battle map. You can't gain anything by going out of bounds, and those few extra seconds to get back would just be reasonable. Similarly, the air boundaries should be much larger than the ground boundaries, and they need to sort out ground clutter, because it is not fun to reverse get hung up on ground clutter with your arse hanging out of the map, only to get cyber jibbed because you couldn't unfuck your stuck vehicle in under 5 seconds. Activision are most likely going to spend the whole year not fixing their broken maps. At least give me an extra 5 to 10 seconds to unfuck my fucked vehicle on their fucked maps. On nearly all the maps, the enemy can snipe into the main base spawn, sometimes locking you out of your own vehicles. In fact, the combat is generally way too close to the base spawn points. On one map, the enemy can literally occupy a semicircle of vantage points around your first spawn location, and they can lock down the entire team in the building. I'm going to assume this is because of some kind of cost-saving server map size problem. The daily challenges are a precise indicator of how few fucks they have to give about the live experience right now. Sometimes specific daily challenges like kill 5 players with a marksman rifle repeat for multiple days in a row. How hard is it to mix it up? Personally, I've had that daily challenge now nearly every day for over a week. I appreciate that the interns must have been busy recently, ballot stuffing, going to furry conventions or whatever it is they do in their spare time, but surely they can spare one person for 10 minutes a day to add some variability to the daily challenges. I guess I should mention all the other game modes. On the plus side, Modern Warfare 2 is at least a veritable infant's activity centre for playing, killing and war. Whilst I'm sure some of the options will change over time, currently we have standard quick matches on rotating modes like TDM and Domination, Ground War, which is best described as budget battlefield, Invasion, which is like linear ground war with trainer wheels. Both teams push against each other to gain ground, both teams are supplemented by annoying bots. DMZ, which is some kind of mission-based, squad-based PvE mode which I don't play. Warzone 2, which is basically adult Fortnite, with even more hackers than TDM. Battle Royale quads, whatever the fuck that is. Sounds like some kind of Korean death orgy TV show. And a whole host of other small co-op modes and activities. And of course, you have the dreaded campaign. So I will begrudgingly concede that this is one area where there was some added value, semi-implemented. On a scale from PvE to aggressive solo Twitch Reflex PvP, there is something here for everyone. Overall, and in its defence, what it has done nicely is this: it has catered for practically every type of conceivable single and multiplayer FPS playstyle. My reflex response time isn't counted in milliseconds anymore, it's counted in wank breaks, so I'm always going to get screwed in small competitive matches like TDM. I am, however, a crafty camping devious degenerate tactical big map player / camper, so ground war suits me down to the ground. I can camp the back line in vehicles and rain death down on choke points, whilst episodically hammering their troop helicopter. This mode plays to all my strengths and moral deficiencies. If you like co-op play, then whether you want to compete with other players or against AI, there is plenty of violent killing to be had with your mates. So yeah, the diversification into seemingly every and all type of FPS genre and mode, all accessed via the games menu, is a decisive win. Especially since it means there's always something to do when you get pissed off with the sweaties and fucklords running hacks in TDM or kill confirmed. The gunplay. The differentiation of weapons into categories like battle rifle, marksman rifle and sniper rifle is a real advance in awareness, considering that there's most likely not a single concealed carry permit in the whole of Infinity Ward's operation. I can't speak for Activision Shanghai, but I'm sure the spies are probably armed. Also, putting PDWs into the category of SMG is technically correct. Personally, this has never sat well with me, but Gun Jesus has spoken on the topic, and thus we must all obey. If Ian McCollum says that PDWs are technically submachine guns, then who am I to question his wisdom? Assault rifle? Well, that's problematic for a whole host of reasons. I'm no expert, but as I understood it, assault rifle means a rifle capable of single shot or fully automatic fire that takes an intermediate cartridge. Just for the record, it does not mean scary polymer gun with magazines that should be banned because rights don't matter. Since it's a video game, I will live with the assault rifle definition, even though I'm not sure all the weapons in the category qualify, and I know it's a loaded term politically. I'm sure the comment section will light up like a fucking Christmas tree, just for merely mentioning this phrase. But when it comes to graphics, modelling, animations and audio, personally I think the guns are great. I think maybe one or two of the marksman rifles have a report that makes them feel a bit pissy. But there it is. Oh, and they rattle around too. But most of the guns and gun types are best described as sexually gratifying. All the usual caveats apply that always apply to Call of Duty games. The LMGs are nowhere near powerful enough. The shotguns spray buckshot like comedy blunderbusses. And as usual, there is a pistol that will annihilate people more effectively than some long guns. In their defence, they did actually introduce the RAAL or RAAL, which is apparently based on the Sig Sauer MG338. And finally, we get something that more realistically emulates the power of a serious LMG. I can't comment extensively on the balancing of the weapon archetypes or individual guns because I don't take the game seriously enough and I lack the fucks to care. This said, apparently the cast-off 7.62 is already getting nerfed for being massively overpowered. But then again, it just wouldn't be a Call of Duty game without them launching with at least one weapon where an intern typed in the wrong number somewhere and accidentally ended up creating a pocket railgun. There is a big question mark over the gun mods and weapon tuning mechanics, and in an area where I can't really speak with authority, but that's never stopped me before. Whilst it's super nice that they have done a better job than many recent games in not going full Harry Potter on this shit, the modifications and weapon archetype levelling is at least trying to make some kind of coherent sense, and the max level weapon tuning is a sight to behold. There is nevertheless an elephant in the room that we need to discuss. The insistence on balancing the pros and cons so tightly means that there is often questionable net benefit to adding mods to your gun, beyond changing the scope and increasing the magazine size. Bear with me here. I appreciate that in video games, just as in real life, there are trade-offs. If I change my AR platform to take 300 Blackout, I will gain stopping power and sheer brute force, in exchange for a heavier rifle, heavier ammunition and lower bullet velocity. I get it. There are always trade-offs. That's why armies don't give everyone 50 cal Barrett sniper rifles. Sure, they're incredibly powerful, accurate and have long range, but that all comes at a cost. Like weighing more than a fucking truck tyre, with each bullet weighing and costing more than a small bar of silver. My point is that in this Call of Duty game, this trade-off might have gone too far. For everything you do to enhance a stat on your gun, something is equally taken away, usually along the lines of increase damage, reduce your chance to hit, increase your chance to hit, reduce damage, and so on and so forth, but in practically equal measure. And that is the critical point, in equal measure. There is no net benefit in doing anything. The weapon mods giveth with one hand and take precisely the same away with the other. If I bought a stock AR in real life, added a red dot sight, bought slightly bigger mags, added a magpull angled foregrip and upgraded the trigger mechanism, this may come at a cost, both financially and possibly weight. But the whole point of upgrading your gun is that you are upgrading it. There might be trade-offs, but no fucker would add aftermarket upgrades if for every improvement it conferred, it punished you equally with some other negative side effect. In Modern Warfare 2, this seems to be what's happening. There is a direct trade-off between any mod's advantage and these negative effects. You are not necessarily upgrading your gun by levelling it up and adding mods, because for every improvement there is an equal and opposite punishment in some other stat. Now, I'm not an expert on this, and I'm just relaying what I've heard other people theorycraft, so bear with me. The point is that this is done to such a high degree that I have even seen one YouTuber suggest that frankly, there is not much point in adding any mods to your gun unless they give you something you absolutely need, like a suppressor to remain hidden, a different magnification sight, and bigger magazines. I think they've possibly taken this too far, possibly slightly fucked it up. They are basically negating much of the improvement in any area of weapon performance, with an equal punishment in another area. hence negating the very reason why we all modify our guns in the fucking first place. This is dumb as shit and ignores one basic principle in life. You don't spend time and effort improving your kit if every improvement directly decreases its performance in some other area. Now, I appreciate that if you want to run around with an SMG absolutely maxed out for power at the expense of accuracy and recoil control and just sprint around the map, shoving it up into randos' faces and holding down the fuck you in your mother button until their head is vaporised, then reload and run off, then I'm sure you love the weapon mods. I'm just saying that in certain areas, some people are complaining that pimping out your gun can do things like absolutely wreck your aim down sight speed and make it non-competitive, therefore making many of the said improvements somewhat redundant, in certain game modes at least. I can't talk with authority on this matter because I just lay down in corners, camping on claymores, and the only balancing issues I have to worry about is whether to use claymores or anti-personnel mines. But I've seen the complaints made by players who know more about it than me, so I'm reporting on the issue even if I don't fully understand it. Sadly, Drifter is moving on to making other content and doesn't cover Call of Duty in depth anymore, so unfortunately I won't be able to steal lots of information from him and regurgitate it. Sad times indeed. It's also worth noting that I experience the following problems occasionally. Firstly, misaligned sights. It seems to have cleared up a bit now, but with certain weapons the front and rear sights would go out of whack and not return to the correct position. They had this slightly swaying animation, and if you do certain things like run and hit the deck, the sights could freeze off to the side, totally on the piss. A bit ridiculous when you really think about it. I also had issues with the C4 detonation. I experienced quite a bit of variability when trying to detonate it. Usually only a variability of about plus or minus 1 second, but a second is a long time when your reflexes are slow and someone is running over your C4. I shit you not, doing the C4 kill challenge was miserable, and trying to kill someone with it when sometimes it would go off instantly, sometimes there was a slight delay, sometimes it would go off if you shoot it, sometimes not, was not my idea of fun. It's a lethal tool. If you can't fix the duration of the detonation animation so it goes off at precisely the time it's activated every time, well, maybe go to a private room and have a word with yourself. But at least from a cinematic and experiential point of view, I thought the guns were fantastic. When it comes to physics, balancing and performance, well, who knows? Nobody is really going to know until they've finished nerfing and buffing for 6 months and fixed their servers, which will take more than a year. In fact, we will have another game before they do that. So what is my overall evaluation of Modern Warfare 2? Call of Duty is a franchise I love to hate. Even though I'm terrible at it and I routinely revel in its shitness most years, secretly I have far more fun playing this monument to cookie cutter brainless killing sims than I would frankly admit publicly. This year, however, was a slightly joyless affair, and it took me a while to figure out the many reasons why. Not kidding, normally I get lost down the rabbit hole of Call of Duty, find a ton of things to gripe about, yet still find myself obsessing about the hamster wheel banality of unlocking guns and weapon mods. This year was different. To make a comparison, normally Call of Duty is like having a dirty shag with that mental and slightly thick ex-girlfriend that you know you should have nothing to do with. It's dirty, self-destructive, smutty fun. But this year it was like wanking into a plastic tub in a sperm donating clinic. I guess ultimately the outcome is technically and biologically equivalent, but it was a passionless, banal and slightly awkward affair. I'm struggling to pinpoint exactly what is missing this year. I guess one way to put it is this. Call of Duty has for many years been nothing more than a stylised dopamine dispenser. You run on the little unlocking hamster wheel to unlock attachments to improve weapons until you reach peak modification, and at precisely the moment you have finished pimping your death ride, you go straight into the options, swap it out for some level 1 shitcake weapon, and rinse and repeat the process ad infinitum. There is no point to any of this. You jump through the hoop in order to get to the next hoop, so you can jump through that too. There is no end state here, there is no moment where you reach the top of the mountain. There is no peak experience waiting for you. It's a dopamine cycle, just like a monkey being trained to press a buzzer in order to get a chunk of banana. And on top of all of this, once a year, all of that progress gets wiped and you have to start all over again when the next game comes out. I know this, I accept this, I try not to think about the pointlessness of it all. But for some reason this year I'm acutely aware of this fact whilst I'm playing it. There is no point to this game anymore. The natural assumption is that it's something to do with me, but honestly, I think it's to do with them. I think it's because the publisher isn't even pretending to care anymore. Everything is lackluster, everything is still minimal viable product, the monetization is worse, their attempts to shield the player from naughty rude words and hurt fifis is worse, and despite their attempts to not fuck it up this year, they still can't unfuck themselves long enough to make sure the servers work before launch. And check to see if someone has cleared away the shopping trolleys. I'm very used to games that are bad because people fucked it up. I guess what I'm saying is that it's hard to care about Call of Duty this year when the publisher so clearly doesn't either. It's a generic, bland, derivative, safe space for monetization, and if Activision doesn't really give a shit about the soul of the franchise, then why should we? Following from this, anyone dropping money on in-game purchases frankly needs to get their heads examined. I appreciate how tempting it can be, and I have caved in myself under extreme conditions. In the interest of full disclosure, in a previous iteration of Call of Duty I bought the clown costume and camped the shit out of the choke points with an LMG on Nuketown until my eyes bled. As soon as I saw that clown outfit I knew I was destined to wear it, but as fun as it was stupid to drop that money on it. I probably could have bought a real clown mask and a bottle of hooch with that money. And this is precisely what you need to do when you're tempted to buy that stupid gun that fires laser bullets because it looks cool in game. Ask yourself, what could I do with that money instead? Because I can guarantee you that if you spend that money on something real and tangible in real life, it will provide you with more enjoyment and utility in the long run. And you will still own it long after the game gets replaced with a sequel and becomes shit-canned. They cheaped out on the gun licenses too, which may well be less of a financial issue and more of an indication of insincerity and hypocrisy. Who would have guessed that a multi-billion-dollar organisation like Activision wouldn't be able to afford to fling a few bucks at a couple of random gun companies to use the real gun names? While some of these gun names are not even licensed. So I'm starting to suspect it's actually more of an ESG driven move to depopularise certain guns, or at least avoid looking like they are inadvertently promoting certain hot topic guns. Video game companies have come under fire before for being accused of promoting firearms. My point is that I don't buy this whole bullshit whitewash cover story that they simply don't use real names because of some befuddling legal issues that they find really annoying. Bobby Kotick apparently has the capability to organise hitmen and not go to jail, so I'm confident his army of lawyers can secure the rights to use the real gun names. Then there is also the issue that some gun companies are happy to have their weapons promoted in video games and see it as free advertising. Apparently, the only reason the P90 was dropped from the TV show Stargate was because the blank rounds were so damn expensive and proprietary. Other than that, Evan Herstal was ecstatic about the gun being popularised on TV. Then there is the issue that certain guns like the AK-47 are not even under copyright. Add to this, that it's not just about using the name. If this really was purely a copyright issue, surely just using an accurate likeness of an, say, MP5 or a SCAR would invoke the spectre of copyright lawsuits. I don't know what is really going on here, but the answer certainly is not as simple as the bullshit hot take they keep spinning to us. When there are weapons that are factually not protected by copyright, why do virtually all guns have a bullshit name by default? I am very aware that some video game publishers are very paranoid about being accused of promoting guns in their video games. Stuff full of guns, where you run around with guns, shooting people with guns. Taking a quick look through the whole weapons list, they did name the M4 and the M16 correctly. I know they are platforms manufactured by multiple companies, but nevertheless my initial thought was they named the American guns correctly, but not the rest. This is even more odd, since you would think that gun makers in the US are in the easiest position to sue Activision. Fuck knows what this is all about, but as usual with video games, something complex is going on here, and they just throw us a bullshit hot take instead of giving us a proper explanation. The instability in Ground War is unforgivable. The number of failures I've been getting on a practically bespoke gaming rig is unconscionable. I hammered this game for a whole day and on one occasion had about 5 crashes. What is also odd is that it always seemed to be right near the end of the game where we were about to win and I was doing very well. These conditions were so consistent that it made me wonder whether it was something to do with the anti-cheat running extra passes on people doing well in matches, them balking up and accidentally crashing the game client. Sure, this is speculation, but it's at least based on the observable events. The game seems practically inclined to fuck me just as I'm doing really well. But whatever the cause, routinely having the game crash and then instruct you to do a 10 to 20 minute scan and repair multiple times per day is ridiculous. I haven't smashed a keyboard in many years, but playing this game, I came close. Nobody gives a fuck about the odd crash in a 5-minute match, but if the only thing these fucktards can do with any degree of reliability is ruin your top 5 ground war battles every day, then seriously, they should be ashamed for this. And don't even get me started about the time that matchmaking for Ground War broke. It took up to an hour to get a single match, and this problem persisted for, wait for it, over a day. The third person clipping is a disgrace. In vehicles you spend most of your time aiming in third person only to have your rounds hit some mound in the earth, the edge of a crate or the top of a building. Modern Warfare 2 is a vehicular third-person shitshow extraordinaire. There is most likely a plethora of ways to fix this. Make the rounds come out of the same top point of the tank where the aiming reticule is based on. Make the reticule turn red if there is an obstruction between the end of the cannon and where the reticule is, providing a player with a warning that they are aiming at something they can't hit. Perhaps make the aiming reticule jump from the intended target to the actual point of impact. Yeah, maybe that's it right there. The important thing is, don't let the player target some helicopter with the crosshairs if the game knows the rounds are actually going to hit the top of the fucking building. This is beta levels of not fixed, with an extra serving of what the actual fuck is going on, because this is so broken. And let's not forget, it had to have been broken all the way along the production line until launch day. The weapon platform unlocking system seems like a nice idea, but ultimately I'm not convinced it is. It's like the way they hide food for polar bears in a zoo. You know where they freeze the fish in blocks of ice or hide it around the cage in order to make the polar bear work to find it, to stave off depression because it's preferable to just giving the bears Prozac? Not kidding, by the way. Some zoos have given Prozac to their polar bears because they get so depressed with their ultimately futile existence. At first I thought the more convoluted unlock system was a good idea to keep us busy, but let's not forget that they employ these tactics to stave off the effects of having a really shit life in a cage. This overcomplicated cross-weapon platform level BS is basically that. It's trying to stave off depression by tricking us into thinking we don't have a really shit life in the Call of Duty cage. I guess my shift in opinion came when I finally levelled my corner camping shotgun to max level, then suddenly found things that were still not unlocked. Looking closer, I realised that certain items like an ammunition type would only be unlocked by levelling some other weapons, some of which I fucking hate using. And that's when I realised that this entire process is about forcing the player to level up all the guns. It's about stretching out the engagement time without adding the corresponding amount of extra actual content. If you want all the items unlocked for your favourite gun, you might have to level up 5 other guns, some of which might be a massive ball ache, for no other reason than because they say so. I think this is ultimately manipulative and cheap. It's just not fun being forced to max level some gun you hate just to unlock that donk for the gun that you like, which is already max level. I will, however, say that with Modern Warfare 2, it absolutely is not all bad news. You can have claymores and noob tubes. How cool is that? In fact, if you pick the right perks, they replenish very rapidly, so you can spam claymores. So the game is not entirely without redeeming features. So if you ever hear anyone claim that Modern Warfare 2 is entirely without merit, well, you can tell them from me this is not true. Any Call of Duty title that lets me squat on a table in the corner on a nest of claymores has at least won a small place in my heart. Seriously, this could only get better if they were to let me put down 4 claymores at a time, and gave me a metal dumpster to hide in whilst I did it. The other major success of Call of Duty, and this frankly started before this iteration, is that Call of Duty is ironically the new Battlefield. Well, technically Battlefield 1, made in 2016, is the new Battlefield, because Battlefield players were so pissed off with Battlefield 2042, they all decamped to play Battlefield 1, which now has a 24-hour peak for concurrent players of over 23,000. That's nearly half of its all-time peak player count. Ground War in Modern Warfare 2, despite its unfinished maps, balked terrain, shitty servers and god knows how many endless bugs, war glitches and performance issues, is still a better version of Battlefield than DICE can make these days. I am confident that they are self-consciously aware of this. They are deliberately targeting this, and the fact that they have introduced a trainer wheel version of Ground War with added bots for ease of play just goes to show they are actively trying to lure players into the mode. This is no mean feat and should be taken very seriously by EA. And I will spell this out. Right now, Activision is doing a better job of pleasing Battlefield players than EA and DICE can. And if this were not true, a 7-year-old Battlefield game wouldn't be the most popular iteration right now. But when I had an honesty moment with myself, I did think this. When I sat down and thought really hard about Ground War, the one part of the game I enjoyed, I had a little self-revelation moment. It's not that it's good, it's that it just about manages to fill that slot which is left because the Battlefield franchise went down the shitter. It's all relative. Ground War is just the best Battlefield type release of late, and the bar is set, let's face it, very low at the moment. I mean, dog food tastes delicious if you haven't eaten in 3 weeks. Much has been made of the financial sales of Modern Warfare 2, with it being announced as the most lucrative and best-selling Call of Duty iteration of all time. Personally, I don't think this is about what they think it's about. I don't think this is their victory, a product of marketing, a virtue of the product itself, or a sign they have done anything right, per se. I mean, check out the Metacritic reviews. It's a pretty lukewarm reception at best. I don't think the industry should draw any grandiose conclusions about the game's quality, for several simple reasons. 1. There isn't really that much hot competition these days. Let's face it, we have had years of shit mainstream FPS releases. 2. Battlefail 2040 Fail was such an unmitigated disaster, you had that entire cohort of players looking for an FPS fix somewhere else now. That's a lot of potential customers floating around in the marketplace. 3. It's basically a follow-up to Modern Warfare 2, 2009, which is one of the most popular games in the series. So it has huge nostalgia factor. The financial successes of Modern Warfare 2 cannot readily be attributed to the game itself. Because let's be honest, metaphorically, this can of dog food is all we have to eat. So to recap, overall, Modern Warfare 2 is a fuck farm of a game, and the launch as expected has been a complete shitburger. The monetization is egregious and the list of faults is theoretically, possibly literally, endless. But at least the campaign wasn't a woke shitshow like last year. The operators are not a bunch of non-binary woke-tards, straight out of an anarchist comic store fan fiction story, and Ground War, for me at least, is a semi-decent albeit lacklustre experience. And I get claymores. The safe space culture of Call of Duty deserves some attention. Whilst the wokery has been dialed back this year, do not be fooled into thinking that the long-term agenda with Activision's online experience is anything but manipulative, disingenuous, woke, social engineering. I mean, they make you sign a fucking code of conduct before you can play the game. Personally, I am generally always nice to other people in video games because I feel guilty about my camping. But nobody should be obliged to be nice in online shooters. It certainly should not involve contracts. Legally binding contracts. Since when did video game prenups become a thing? If I am camping under a table with my chin resting on a claymore, I expect people to rage at me. That is their right. I don't deserve to be treated with dignity nor respect, and I certainly don't want to see other people punished for my crimes against video games. I understand rules like don't cheat, don't be a racist fuck, and to be honest, I can't safely suggest much more than that because these rules get co-opted and then used as a mechanism to prosecute agendas. We have to be very careful about letting video game developers prescribe social rules to us, while simultaneously rolling out mechanisms like Defense Matrix, which are basically Orwellian systems for recording your communications, so that they can be used against you later or stored and handed over to the authorities. Now I know right now some people are probably thinking, but what about threats? Surely anyone making a threat, joking or otherwise, deserves to have that recorded and handed to the police. Well, personally, I am none too convinced about that. For a start, how many people have actually threatened to kill someone online and then done so? Seriously, as a criminal demographic, how much does that qualify as a useful and targetable demographic for police concern? Off the top of my head, I can only think of about a handful of video game related murders in the entire history of video games, and the ones I know of were not preceded by a threat in game. Sure, the Columbine shooters did apparently, but they were doing it in real life too, and telegraphed their impending savagery to the entire school for years before this manifested into the tragedy that unfolded. I would posit that running surveillance on angry shit that gamers say in matches would lead to precisely 0 attacks being stopped in real life, because 0 of these comments are anything other than in-game smack talk, and it's taken far too seriously. Anyone who thinks they are going to set up a functioning pre-crime unit by taking death threats in a violent video game seriously may have not considered that they were said in the context of a violent video game, and there's no historical evidence of them being acted on. And most importantly, recording these comments and possibly actioning some form of reporting on it is a charter for putting players in jail for talking smack in a fictional online environment, semi in character. To hammer this point home, here are 2 pertinent examples to illustrate the difference between reality and hysteria. Here is Daryl A. Brooks. He made posts on social media about black supremacy, made many explicit death threats of a terrorist nature, and, most significantly, actually did try and kill the mother of his child by running her over in his SUV. Well, he was released on a $1,000 bail, only to go on to commit mass murder in one of the most heinous terrorist attacks of recent times. For this entire period, a young man called Josh Pilau was in jail. He got shit-faced drunk whilst playing RuneScape and made a threat to blow up a school during a match. Well, he got raided by the FBI, and despite no weapons, tools or evidence that this was anything more than drunken shit talk, well, he got sentenced to 6 years in jail. Now, Josh Pilau is not an uncontroversial character. He was a pisshead and a stoner, had lots of minor run-ins with local cops over the years, and certainly fitted that caricature boogeyman image of a school shooter. But he was a caricature boogeyman. There was no evidence of intent or evidence full stop. He just said some stupid shit whilst playing a video game on the internet.
To the Honorable Judge Michael P. Mills, my name is Joshua Brandon Palaut. I'm currently 28 years of age, though I was 19 when my case came onto your desk. You sentenced me to 72 months of imprisonment despite the federal guideline range recommending a maximum of 2 years for transmitting threats to kill and injure the person of another, and that is with the 6-point enhancement for intention to carry out the threats that you decided to place on me. Somehow, your superiors upheld this blatantly excessive sentence after my direct appeal went before the district court. You never gave me a chance to speak to you directly in any way. You never looked me in the eyes, and you seemed to be asleep for a significant portion of my hours-long sentencing hearing.
I would suggest that given his problems with substance abuse, his problems at home, and the fact that he was drunk when he said it, would qualify him for social support and a swift kick in the arse from the cops. An FBI raid, followed by nearly a decade of subsequent custody for a threat, is off the charts. I could go on Twitter right now and find endless death threats made by people against J.K. Rowling. How many of those people are getting arrested? Probably none. So yeah, there seems to be no equivalency in treatment, and gamers are widely perceived as all being potential serial killer, domestic terrorists, white supremacists and embryonic school shooters. Running over your girlfriend and calling for white genocide, well, that's just fine. But dear Lord, don't say mean words on the internet whilst playing a video game, or you will end up being treated like a member of Bader Meinhof. So be very careful about Defence Matrix and all other similar initiatives, because personally, I think it's just a matter of time before we start seeing people jailed for screeching at people in video game lobbies, and our shit posts routinely handed over to the police. On a slightly more positive note, very strangely, they have removed the word filter on naming your loadouts after years of complaint. I guess this means that someone at Activision might be watching critical YouTube videos. I like this change, well done, although it's sadly more likely that they just didn't finish this part of the game's censorship. Like, you know, how most of the game isn't finished properly. It has always ground my gears and been a point of fury amongst many players that they censor the names of your own loadouts and presets which only you can see, which is overreach on so many levels. I also suspect that they might have relaxed the naming filter slightly. I won't give any specific examples of player names for fear of getting people banned, but let's just say I have seen some rather fruity names in the lobbies recently, including political, religious and comedic names. I just hope Activision isn't reporting them all to the pre-crime unit as we speak. The default calling cards at launch were almost exclusively some variation on gay pride. Not kidding. At launch there were only 22 calling cards to select from, 18 different gay pride flags and 4 Call of Duty ones. Stop and think about that. At launch, 82% of all the player calling cards were some form of gay pride flag. What exactly are they trying to ram down our throats here? Figuratively speaking. Personally, I'm a staunch supporter of equal rights. I openly and stoically denounce persecuting people based on sexuality or any other immutable aspect of their being. We are all equal in the eyes of God, Cthulhu, Gun Jesus, or whatever other deity you wish to worship. But Why the fuck would Activision think it was appropriate to co-opt players into flying gay pride flags? I don't think this was misjudgment, this was deliberately political. I think they were trying to force identity politics onto the players and the matches, and the early release game footage. This was a statement saying, you are an ally by default, but I guess you can choose to be a hater by picking one of the 4 non-pride flags. And I bet that information's gone in a database somewhere. I personally can't differentiate which pride flags are which. For all I know, some of them are those new ones that include furries, creepers, and those people that threaten to kill the nice wizard lady. And all the while, Activision maintains that expression of politics and political views are absolutely banned in their games. One rule for thee, one rule for me. I can't stress enough, I believe in equality, but I also believe that trying to shoehorn people into supporting a political cause is tyranny. I don't want to fly a gay pride flag in the same way I wouldn't fly a BLM flag. They are not representative of purely peaceful ideological positions. They are manifestations of divisive and tribal politics. And if this was not the case, then there wouldn't currently be over 20 different gay pride flags, some of which include pederasts, and they all wouldn't constantly fucking squabble about which one's the right one to put up on the wall. So I do congratulate Activision for making the operators seem vaguely plausible and not appear like Twitter employees, and I applaud them for making the campaign at least vaguely represent something akin to a Call of Duty storyline. But make no mistake, the identity politics and social control mechanisms are hard baked into this game. It's getting worse every year. They're just adapting to make it less grating, while stuffing more of the actual progressive politics under the hood. And before I forget, it goes without saying that the almost broken in-game text comms are censored to fucking oblivion. One guy said something in chat and only the last word of the sentence and the punctuation wasn't blocked out with asterisks. It was almost as bad as a Pfizer document. So yeah, nobody's going to be able to easily figure out what words are on the ban list this year, because it would appear that 1. Nearly everything is, and 2. They're censoring words either side of the censored word just for good measure. But this forces the conclusion that they are deliberately blanket censoring sentences that contain certain words, so we can't figure out what words are on the ban list. Perhaps it's time we all learn Morse code. We can start communicating in chat with dots and dashes. Look, maybe I'm making too much of a big deal about this, but just to recap, this game contains a social control algorithm driven spy bot that monitors and records your communications, both written and spoken over comms. It released with nearly every single available player calling card being a gay pride flag. They make you sign a behavioural contract, like a relationship therapist. We are the ones paying them for this service. After Twitter gets defenestrated, maybe someone should come and take a look at AAA publishers. I guess it's time to finally round this all up. In many ways, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order of the Call of Duty legacy. Remember how Star Wars Battlefuck 2 turned out to be a loot box holocaust of monetization that tanked the IP? So the next EA Star Wars game was basically given the primary goal of simply not fucking it up this time. Well, they didn't, but the game was boring and bland as a result. You see, when setting out on a creative journey, there are many directions, twists, turns and flights of fancy the creators can take. The creative journey involves different phases of exploration, reflection, examination, imagination and creation. This all theoretically leads to the ultimate conclusion of the end result, a creative product. But when that journey begins with your bosses saying, get from A to B as fast and as cheaply as possible and don't fuck it up, well, the end result is going to be muted and not very creative. Getting an Uber to the local train station and the budget sleeper train to the next city, then the number 46 bus to the office, might well be efficient. But it's not really in the same league as spending 6 months travelling around India and the Himalayas, smashing bongs and hanging out with spiritual gurus. See my point? Modern Warfare 2 is what happens when you make Call of Duty Vanguard an obnoxious offensive wokegasm of monetization and non-binary representation, and try and poke it down the throat of World War II history with a fucking stick. Then your boss walks in later and says, make another Call of Duty game but don't do what you did last time. In fact, Modern Warfare 2 is best described as not what they did last time. And not being shit is not the same as being good. There is nothing particularly offensive about the content or concepts. They have dialed back the ESG metrics and critical race theory, on the surface at least, and it's surprisingly absent of the usual neo-communist propaganda. Not entirely absent, but mostly. But it's a soulless husk, because it's not genuine nor imaginative. Modern Warfare 2 fails to be anything, because its primary creative directive is to not be something. It's just trying to not be a woke fuck up like the last one. So we get a slightly muted version of wokeness and a game that clearly was not made by anyone that feels passionately about war games, video games, warfare, guns, and most importantly perhaps, the players. In fairness, there almost certainly were people who felt passionately about these issues. But if they were there, they clearly weren't in senior positions, and you can bet your arse their views and opinions were subject to gatekeeping and dictatorial decisions coming down from senior management. The existential question here is why even bother to remake the game when really all we need is for someone to finally make a Call of Duty multiplayer where the anti-cheat is working, the netcode is tight, the servers aren't balked, and it's not full of bugs, glitches and broken or missing mechanics. Get the foundations right and then just keep updating the maps every year. If for some reason they reinvent the multiplayer wheel every time, so here we are 2 fucking decades later with the devs rolling out yet another iteration of the same franchise with all the same fucking problems, which they will most likely only half fix by the time the sequel comes out, before they smash this house down and start rebuilding it from scratch all over again. Now this might sound like a stupid, incomprehensible act of Sisyphean stupidity, until you realise that contractors don't mind making the same shit, they're knocking it down over and over and over, as long as someone is paying the bill. It would make more sense to keep the basic engine, netcode and underlying mechanics of the game relatively stable year on year and improve it with each iteration, swap the skins, add some more maps, tweak the graphics, get the core mechanics nailed down and sell playable content as DLC. There is no need to start from scratch every year, but then of course they would have to charge us less and they wouldn't have an excuse for removing all of the microtransactions every 12 months. I like to ask the question, for what problem is this the solution? Why did we get a new Call of Duty game? Because it certainly wasn't done to improve the player experience, tell a new bold story, or offer the customer something they couldn't get elsewhere. We needed this game less than we need Alyssa Milano's Pearls of Wisdom on the internet, another season of cock rings of power, or a Greta Thunberg OnlyFans site. I'm not sure. This game has a fucking point. The moral of the story here is oh so simple. Don't pre-order video games. Don't piss away your money. Don't encourage publishers to try and get away with launching shit-show unfinished product. Don't contribute to the decline of the industry. Don't ignore good independent developers. And don't reward other people for pissing down your back and telling you it's raining. So yes, pre-ordering video games based on promises made by companies that habitually always lie about everything makes a fool of you, makes them rich, and makes games worse. But for now, good luck, and happy hunting.
Enemy UAV overhead. Friendly counter UAV is online.